Hey guys, tonight we slip into something warm and a little unsettling. Italy, sometime in the late 1400s. The sky is bleeding fire. A comet with a tail like 1,000 knives arcs over Florence, and you're just trying to find your towel. People scream about omens and plagues, but there's also steam, chatter, and the musky comfort of the local bathhouse. Welcome to a world where the sky predicts your doom, but a good soak might still fix your mood. You probably won't survive this, at least not if you believe the town astrologer. He's already scrawled your fate in gold ink, probably involving boils, bad crops, or demons with extra knees. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing who's drifting off with me from halfway around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're barefoot. The marble is cold, and your breath curls in the air like a tiny ghost. Outside, a comet, fiery, furious, almost smug, scrapes across the heavens. The city is buzzing with panic. But in here? It's steam and flickering lamplight, a clamor of bare bodies and soft gossip, the hiss of hot water poured over stone. The contradiction hits hard. Up above, a flaming sword. Down below, a social spa. You glance out a narrow window, past the tiled roof, and catch another glimpse of that comet. It doesn't just hang there like a pretty sparkler, it pulses. People say it stinks of sulfur. Others say it whispered to them. One man swore it blinked. Historians still argue whether Renaissance Italians genuinely believed comets caused earthquakes and kings' deaths or if it was more performative panic, a kind of dramatic superstition theater. Either way, fear was fashionable. And yet, so was bathing. You'd think people terrified of divine judgment might spend more time praying than exfoliating, but nope. They loved a good bath. Your towel's already damp, but you drape it over a smooth stone bench. Across from you, two elderly men argue about whether this comet is a sign of the Pope's coming death or just an unusually angry star. A young woman laughs and flicks water at them with a bamboo ladle. Comets weren't just casual sky decor back then. They were messengers of doom. The kind that made people fast, cry, or pack up and flee into the hills. Church bells would toll without a mass. Pregnant women were warned not to look up. You think about that for a moment, how something as distant and indifferent as a comet could cause full-body panic, and then you notice the bath attendant lighting more candles. A little ritual of comfort while the world supposedly ends. The bathhouse isn't fancy. You've been to the newer ones, some funded by Medici gold. All white marble and flotation. But this is more homey, slightly crumbling, faintly mossy. It smells like rosemary, old tile, and singed oil. The fountain trickles beside you like someone mumbling a secret. A merchant slides into the water beside you, sighs dramatically, and says, if it hits Florence, I hope it squashes that loud tailor on Via Roma. That earns him a chuckle and a splash from someone nearby. The whole setup feels bizarrely cozy. You try to imagine explaining this to someone from the future. Yes, a flaming object is screaming across the heavens, and yes, we're having a bubble soak while debating whether it's aimed at the Pope. You'd be committed. But that was life here. A blend of beauty and fear. Gold leaf halos next to piles of plague corpses. Poetry written with wine-stained fingers. Naked men lounging under frescoes of angels while debating whether the world ends tomorrow or next Thursday. A splash echoes as someone cannonballs into the cold pool, shouting, if the devil's coming, let him find me. Relax. There's a freedom in that, isn't there? You can't stop the comet. You don't even understand what it is. But you can choose to scrub your knees and gossip about your neighbor while it burns through the sky. You can decide, in your little tiled corner of the universe, that you will be clean when the heavens fall. A local priest pokes his head in, not to condemn the sinners, but to offer discounted indulgences. Half-price forgiveness if you donate before midnight. Limited time apocalypse sale. The woman who flicked water earlier mutters, he probably thinks the comet is targeting his wine stash. One old man claims he's seen this comet before, when he was a child. He describes how his village goats screamed for a week and a bishop died of fright. You know he's lying, but the image is too good to ruin. As you ease deeper into the warmth, the fear outside becomes muffled, softened. The bathhouse hums with life, voices, limbs, slow laughter. The comet can wait. You dip your head under and hear only your own breath. When you surface, steam rolls off your skin. The bathhouse walls glow gold from the candlelight. A little boy balances on the edge, flapping his arms like wings. "I'm flying to hit the comet first," he cries. Someone hands you a ladle of herbal water. It tastes like mint and something you can't name. The kind of flavor that feels old. Like it remembers plagues and popes and fires and miracles. You lean back against the stone, half listening to someone retelling a dream they had. The comet spoke to me in Latin and kissed my forehead, and for just a moment, it all feels okay. If the world ends, it ends. You're warm, you're floating, and someone next to you just made a pun about heavenly bodies. Outside, the comet pulses again. You meet its gaze and raise your wet hand in a lazy salute. Let it watch. You wake up with a start. Well, not wake up exactly. You just drifted a little in the warm water, lulled by steam and flickering lamplight. But now the conversation around you has shifted, and your ears catch the new rhythm, quieter, sharper, tinged with dread. Someone just said omen in that voice people use when they think something unholy is watching. You sit up slightly, ears still ringing from the plunge. The comet, of course. That streaking, screaming monster up there. Last night's companion. But now it's morning, or close enough, and everyone's had time to panic properly. Across the bathhouse, a city courier bursts in, dripping sweat, not water. He's wrapped in a threadbare tunic and waving a parchment. Rome confirms it, he bellows. The Pope's court saw the comet too. They say it's the Lord's displeasure. A hush falls like someone smothered the room with a thick wool cloak. You're surrounded by naked, half-soaked humans staring like they've been caught trespassing on heaven's lawn. Comets weren't novelties back then. They were warnings. Alarms, if you like, but cosmic, flaming, inescapable ones. Unlike eclipses, which were scheduled celestial appointments, comets felt like surprise inspections from the divine. No one had told them to come. No one knew when they'd leave. And they never arrived quietly. A barber mutters, "The last time we had one, my cousin's pigs keeled over. All of them. One day, plop. Gone." He slices the air with his hand for dramatic effect. You raise an eyebrow. Somehow, you doubt pork was the comet's main target. Still, it wasn't just gossip. City leaders called emergency council meetings. Church bells tolled. Fast days were declared with no warning. A man 2 benches over clutches a talisman around his neck. It's shaped like a tiny sword. Supposedly it's forged with metal blessed during a previous comet's passing. You don't ask questions. Historians still argue whether authorities actually believed in the comet's wrath or simply used it as convenient leverage. What better way to explain plagues, famines, or failed banking schemes than well, there's that skyfire thing. Definitely curse. You rise from the water and wrap a towel around your waist, the conversation swirling behind you like mist. The cobbled streets are louder now, alive with whispers. Somewhere, a cart overturns. A child cries. A priest shouts about repentance, his voice crackling like old parchment. The townsfolk don't just gawk up at the sky, they prepare for doom in creative ways. One woman on your street has painted a white cross over her door using goat's milk. Her neighbor stares at her like she's an amateur. He's burned lavender in all 4 corners of his house and tied garlic to the chimney. You hear he also sleeps with one eye open and a loaf of consecrated bread under his pillow. But fear isn't evenly distributed. You watch a group of merchants lounging in their arched loggia, sipping thick coffee and debating whether the comet signals war or merely a fiscal contraction. One says, either way, I'm investing in more barrels of salt. You turn down a quieter lane and spot a woman tying cloth over her child's eyes. So you won't see it, she explains. If you see it while young, it marks you. Marks you for what? She doesn't say. But the look in her eyes says everything. There are street artists now, hawking crude sketches of the comet. One shows it with a gaping mouth full of flame. Another draws little devils riding its tail. You pass one woodcut that's practically tasteful, just a glowing orb streaking past a church steeple. Limited edition, the artist says. Carved in panic. Meanwhile, some are taking the end times as an excuse for indulgence. A plump baker you pass offers you a honey pastry just in case. You don't refuse. The dough is still warm, flaky with a sugared crisp. If the world's ending, this is the snack to go out on. But not everyone's panicking in public. Inside the upper rooms of Florence's wealthier houses, behind silk curtains and carved doors, rich families hold quiet crisis meetings. You hear snippets when you walk past an open window. Is our will updated? Did we bribe that astrologer yet? Cancel the wedding, we don't want bad luck hanging over the cake. Comet anxiety goes beyond superstition, it's political. A duke in the north has reportedly moved his troops to a safer, more uncursed location. Rumors of assassination plots swirl, justified as ridding us of men the comet clearly disapproves of. The bathhouse you came from, once a sanctuary of steam and snark, now pulses with edgier tension. A man sits by the fountain, his hands folded in silent prayer. He's dripping wet, but not from bathing, he just stood under the cold cascade and let it hammer him like penance. No towel. No words. A pale boy nearby counts the seconds between thunder and lightning, even though there isn't any thunder. He's pretending the sky has a pattern. That it follows rules. Comets shattered that illusion. They didn't orbit on command or stay in their celestial lanes. They were the chaos emoji of the Renaissance heavens. Nobody could explain them. Even the best astronomers were baffled. Some thought comets were nearby, weather gone rogue. Others guessed they were heavenly exhaust, something expelled from the spheres as punishment. You finally return home, exhausted not from physical effort but from the sheer density of dread floating in the air. Your bed feels warm, but the window faces north, right where the comet hangs. You pull the shutters closed and try to pretend the glow is from something less apocalyptic, like moonlight, or a very enthusiastic lantern. Sleep doesn't come easily. You toss. You turn. And then, like everyone else in the city, you dream about fire. Morning again, though time feels slippery now. You wake with a crick in your neck and the vague taste of ash in your mouth, even though nothing is burning, yet. The comet is still up there, of course, hanging low like a cat waiting to pounce. It's the third day since it arrived, and if anything, it seems to be getting cockier. You're not sure how a flaming rock millions of miles away can feel smug, but there it is, flickering like it knows something you don't. Out on the streets, the fear has evolved. Not vanished, oh no, but matured, like cheese or gout. It's less scream and run, more clutch your rosary and mutter about God's temper. The city's heartbeat has shifted, pulsing with superstition. You can feel it in how people walk, faster, eyes darting, always just shy of breaking into a sprint. You wander into a square where 3 men in robes are arguing in front of a small crowd. One quotes Aristotle. Another yells something about divine wrath. The third, wearing a hat entirely too large for his head, insists that the comet is a choleric vapor ignited by sublunary forces. You don't know what that means. Neither does he. But this is what passes for science in the Renaissance. A weird halfway house between ancient philosophy and modern panic. People know they're in a new era. They call it the Renaissance proudly, like naming a baby genius before it's learned to crawl. And yet, so many of their fears are medieval leftovers reheated for the current apocalypse. Historians still argue whether the Renaissance truly marked a clean intellectual break from the Middle Ages or just slapped prettier clothes on the same beliefs. You suspect the truth is somewhere in between, maybe under a very fashionable velvet robe. Take divine punishment, for example. People still think God uses natural disasters as cosmic Yelp reviews. War? Must have been too much dancing. Plague? Someone sinned extra hard. Comet? Oh, boy, you really ticked him off this time. Even the humanists, those fancy-pants scholars trying to bring back Roman virtue, can't help but squint nervously at the sky. You pass a well-known tutor pacing his balcony, muttering lines from Seneca while rubbing a rabbit's foot. Mixed signals, much? Churches are overflowing now. Not just with the usual Sunday crowd, but with people clinging to pews like they might levitate. You slip inside one, just to watch. Candles burn low and smoke curls like incense fingers toward the ceiling. The priest is preaching fire, brimstone, and a limited-time offer on eternal salvation. Repent now, he shouts, before the heavens open like a wound. Some people nod solemnly. Others look around like they're trying to remember if they sinned recently, and how hard. You see one man write something on a slip of parchment, roll it up, and tuck it into his boot. A confession for the afterlife? A secret sin? A grocery list? Unclear. You exit the church into a world where the line between science and sorcery has become dangerously thin. Alchemists have come out of the woodwork with comet bombs and star repellents. One claims that eating garlic dipped in silver wine prevents your soul from being dragged skyward by the tail of the comet. Another sells protective amulets made of crushed beetle wings and dried fig leaves. Works 60% of the time, every time, he says, deadpan. In an alley, you stumble upon a man painting a mural. At first, it looks like a typical religious tableau, until you realize the angels are shielding themselves from a giant flaming comet that appears to be giving them the finger. You raise an eyebrow. The artist just shrugs and says, "Art is truth." The bathhouse is quieter today, not empty, but hushed. As you slip into the warm pool, the mood feels heavier, the laughter forced. Everyone has seen the comet at least once now, and everyone's heard someone say, "It's coming for us specifically." Paranoia, now available in group format. One of the attendants tells you in a whisper that a woman screamed at her own reflection this morning, claiming her eyes had changed color because the sky is watching. Still, they soak. Still, they gossip. Still, they lather their hair with olive paste and argue about whether Pope Sixtus IV once banned bathing during a comet year. He didn't. Probably. You overhear someone ask, "Do you think the stars judge us the way we judge them?" The question hangs there, unanswered, shimmering in the candle flicker. A man near the corner tells a story about a comet that supposedly passed during Julius Caesar's funeral. "The gods mourned him," he says, with a dreamy expression. You remember that tale, too. The Sidus Iulium, a bright comet that Augustus used to claim divine ancestry. If it worked for them, someone says, maybe it's just our turn now. But not everyone buys into the fear. One cheeky merchant loudly claims he's going to name his next child Cometa, boy or girl. It's modern, he explains. Strong, celestial, and impossible to spell wrong. You return home again, this time with a bundle of rosemary tucked into your coat. An old woman at the bathhouse pressed it into your hands, muttering, "Keep this near your bed. It keeps the falling stars away." You didn't have the heart to correct her. You light a lamp, and the shadows stretch long against your wall. The comet's glow spills through the shutters like someone forgot to close heaven's furnace. You sit by the window, rosemary in one hand, pastry crumbs on your lips, and wonder, if the stars are watching, what do they see? You're in the market square when the first accusation flies. Not a metaphorical one, either. A woman actually lobs a spoiled orange at her neighbor while shrieking, which, it misses by a healthy margin, but the sentiment hits home. The townspeople ripple with interest. No one's shocked. If anything, it was overdue. Comets bring out the finger pointers. You inch toward the edge of the crowd, pretending to study a melon, but your ears are all in. The accused, a wiry woman with wild hair and a habit of muttering to cats, stands tall. "It's just a rock in the sky," she yells. "You think I control that with soup bones and dirty socks?" The crowd doesn't love her tone. The accuser clutches a wooden cross and dramatically announces that she saw the woman stirring something foul as the comet first appeared. It smelled of frogs and smelled of sin, she insists, which is both unhelpful and poetic. You sigh. Of course it would come to this. When people can't fight the heavens, they fight each other. This isn't new. Throughout the Renaissance, comets and witch hunts went hand in hand like oil and vinegar, except one of them usually ended in fire. People believed comets were more than omens, they were invitations for evil to step through a cosmic doorway. And who's most likely to open that door? Obviously someone with a goat, a basement, or a herbalist's stall. Historians still argue whether these accusations were genuinely believed or just opportunistic land grabs and social purges. But what's clear is that comet anxiety made neighbors suspicious, and suspicion spread faster than the actual plague. A local friar arrives, frowning dramatically like he's auditioning for a passion play. He listens to both sides, strokes his beard, and then declares a period of spiritual observation. Translation: everyone will now stare at the accused for 3 days and decide if her chickens act weird. You drift from the crowd, unnerved. Your feet crunch through dried petals someone sprinkled in a protective circle. Further along, you spot chalk runes drawn on a door. You blink. Are those letters? Or teeth? This isn't the comforting superstition of lucky coins or whispered charms. It's darker, more desperate. People are trying to control the uncontrollable, and they're getting creative. One family's hanging garlic garlands from every window. Another's using sheep dung to ground the sky's anger. You try not to breathe too deeply walking past that one. Back at the bathhouse, the tensions followed you like smoke. You slip into the warmth, hoping to melt some of the strangeness away, but even here, it lingers. The water's hotter than usual, almost punishing. Across the way, 2 women speak in hushed tones about someone they know, someone too clean, someone who's never sick, someone who knew about the comet before it came. You watch them with half-lidded eyes. The same words could be said about a midwife. Or a scholar. Or, honestly, anyone with above-average luck and below-average social graces. It's a dangerous formula. An equation that always seems to end in burning wood and public screaming. One man, drying himself with an embroidered towel, says, "We never had comets like this before those new books started circulating. You know the ones." Another nods solemnly, though it's unclear if either has read a book this year. Witchcraft accusations and comet sightings often overlapped because they scratched the same psychological itch. People wanted someone to blame, someone nearby, someone smaller. Comets were too big to punish. But neighbors? Easy. There's a theory that keeps surfacing. The comet doesn't cause evil, it reveals it. It's like turning on a cosmic lantern and catching everyone mid-sin. Bathing too long? Scandal. Reading too much? Suspicious. Owning too many cats? Forget about it. You're still thinking about that as you exit the bathhouse and pass the woman from the market. The accused. She's sitting on a stone bench, unshackled but shadowed by 2 guards. She sees you looking and raises an eyebrow. "Afraid I'll hex your towel?" she asks, dry as desert bread. You pause. "Do hex towels get fluffier?" She snorts. "Only if you sprinkle them with goat spit and recite your laundry sins." You chuckle to spite yourself and keep walking, though the sound sticks with you. Not the laugh, hers. It was bitter, yes, but also fearless. Like someone who's already stood under enough comets. Not to care anymore. Back in the city square, the atmosphere shifted. A traveling preacher has rolled into town and set up a makeshift stage. He bellows about celestial punishments and the wicked among us. "They walk among us," he cries, pointing at no one and everyone. "Repent before the stars judge." A child in the crowd points at her teacher. Someone else murmurs about a widow with too much land. The preacher smiles. The kind of smile that starts fires. You back away. You've seen this before, how fear bends logic, how it reshapes normal people into torchbearers. And all it took was a ball of ice and dust, hurtling through the sky like a god with a grudge. Evening descends slowly, syrup thick and violet. The comet glows like a scratch across velvet. You sit on your windowsill, the rosemary still hanging limp beside you. Somewhere, someone is crying. Somewhere else, someone's lighting a candle and muttering a name with venom. The stars do not blink. And you wonder, if the comet does mean judgment, who exactly gets judged? The sky doesn't change much overnight. The comet is still up there, smug and streaky, and your dreams are still full of falling fire and faceless accusations. But today, you notice something new. Fear has crept into the silk-lined halls of the wealthy. The rich are nervous now. And when the rich get scared, the city starts to creak. You walk past the Palazzo Medici and see guards pacing in double shifts. Upstairs, through open shutters, a cardinal in crimson robes wrings his hands while a physician fans him with a folded horoscope. It's not just poor people dunking their cats in rosemary now. Nobles are sweating too, and not from the bathhouse steam. It starts with whispers. A powerful banker's wife refuses to eat anything that isn't salted thrice and blessed by a left-handed monk. A duke cancels his son's wedding and instead funds 300 masses just in case. Another wealthy man has hired 3 astrologers, one for each quadrant of the sky. You stroll past a lavish fountain where 2 merchant lords are talking loudly for privacy. He bought a comet-repelling talisman for 50 florins. One scoffs. "It's just wood. Painted wood." The other shrugs. If it works, it's a bargain. Historians still argue whether the elite genuinely feared celestial omens or used them as tools for influence. It's hard to tell, really. There's a blurry line between belief and performance, especially when everyone's watching. Even in your bathhouse, the mood has changed. The usual merry mix of naked gossip and mild flirtation is quieter, warier. There are more servants scrubbing their masters' backs, more moneyed patrons suddenly talking about charity and sin. One chubby noble tells a long story about how his family line survived 2 previous comet sightings. "We simply donated to the church until it left," he says with a self-satisfied burble, like that settles it. Across the way, a teenage boy in fine linen shivers as he's being scrubbed by a bored servant. "It's watching me," he mumbles. "It knows." Everyone politely pretends they didn't hear. You sink into the warm pool and close your eyes. But you're not alone. You hear a soft splash nearby and crack an eye open. A woman in a turquoise wrap is lowering herself into the water, 2 golden rings on her fingers and not a single line on her brow. Nobility. Her voice is smooth and cold. They say the comet will judge the dishonest, she says, more to herself than anyone else. Which is inconvenient, because I was planning to lie at least twice today. You glance at her. Make them good lies, you offer. She smiles without warmth. Always. The idea that comets could target the sinful was especially popular among those with something to lose. You'd think they'd reject superstition, but no, wealth tends to amplify fear, not eliminate it. The rich had more to confess, more to protect. And now, they were queuing to confess just in case. You hear that certain high-ranking men are trying to buy comet protection. Not spiritually, literally. There's talk of enchanted medallions made by Venetian mystics, of astrologers being bribed to change the stars' verdicts. One merchant even buried a small statue of St. Michael beneath his wine cellar. Just the statue's head, though. The head sees everything, he explained cryptically. Some of them have gotten poetic about it. A letter from a nobleman is circulating among scholars. He calls the comet a flaming eye sent to audit mankind. You can't help but wonder what he's hiding in those scroll shelves. Meanwhile, astrologers are exhausted. You hear one groaning outside a bookshop. I haven't slept in 3 days. Every duke wants their chart updated hourly. The moon doesn't move that fast. And still, everyone's afraid. A fear so old it has fingernails. You catch snippets of poetry scratched into walls. Let the sky flame, let the earth crack, I have washed and confessed. Some nobles are going even further. Fasting. Whipping themselves. One man even sells off all his estates, claiming he'll start anew in the countryside where the comet might not see me behind the hills. Good luck with that. Your favorite bathhouse attendant, Sandro, tells you in a whisper that a rich widow tried to bathe in holy water yesterday. She came with a priest in a full silver tub, he says, wide-eyed. Looked like soup. The priest didn't even blink. You lean back, letting your hair float behind you. It's funny, in a twisted way. Everyone's terrified of dying, but no one stops talking. In fact, they talk more. Fear seems to loosen tongues. Secrets, regrets, debts, all bubbling up in the heat. You hear more confessions in one bath session than in an entire cathedral's worth of sermons. A young page walks by, face flushed, carrying a folded note. You see the seal, it's from a noble family. Probably a bribe. Probably a request. Probably something they wouldn't want the comet to read over their shoulder. You wonder if the comet can read letters. Or if it just senses guilt, like a bloodhound with better lighting. By evening, the city is buzzing with new rumors. A wealthy patron saw his reflection flicker. A banker's dog barked at the comet's tail. Someone claims a noble's silver comb bent in her hand as she brushed her hair beneath the glowing sky. Metal doesn't lie, she told her servants, dramatically. We are cursed. You return home with a bath-warmed body and a half-frozen brain. The contrast is jarring. You sip a bit of wine and stare out the window, where the comet's glow makes the rooftops look like they're burning, softly. You picture a comet high above the city, trailing light like a ribbon soaked in oil, and all these rich men down below flinging money at the sky, hoping it'll blink and spare them. It won't. You're sitting on a wooden stool, pants rolled up, staring suspiciously at a bowl of leeches. This was not how you planned your morning. The apothecary before you, a man with wisps of hair, ink-stained hands, and the eyes of someone who's been awake since the last comet, claps his hands together and beams. Excellent vein visibility, he says cheerfully, lifting a leech like it's a fine jewel. This is the Renaissance's idea of medicine. You're not dying, just comet adjacent. And that's enough to have your pulse checked, your breath examined, and your blood very gently stolen by a creature that looks like a soggy raisin with teeth. It's strange. People here adore the idea of progress, new discoveries, new instruments, new treatises copied and sold in public squares. But medicine? Still a party hosted by medieval ghosts. When the sky throws fireballs at Earth, people don't call for scientists. They call for leeches, garlic, and prayers mumbled into dried lavender. Your humors are probably unbalanced, the apothecary explains, nudging the leech lovingly toward your shin. The comet disturbs the celestial alignments, which in turn disturbs your bile. You stare at him. My bile? He nods sagely, as if this all makes perfect sense. Also your phlegm. Possibly your melancholy. You decide not to tell him you've been melancholy since your favorite bakery switched to barley flour. That's probably unrelated. Historians still argue whether Renaissance physicians genuinely believed in the four humors or were just riffing off Galen to keep their reputations afloat. Either way, the system endured like a bad habit. Earth, air, fire, water, each one tied to parts of the body, each affected by planetary moods. And comets? They were celestial drama queens, wrecking your spleen from miles away. You glance around the apothecary's cramped shop. The shelves are crammed with jars, some filled with dried herbs, others with things that used to crawl. There's a bundle of rosemary, comet-chasing variety, a tiny ceramic unicorn horn, very rare, ignore the glue, and something labeled dragon fat that looks suspiciously like beef tallow. The apothecary hands you a thick, chalky concoction. Comet bomb, he says, will stabilize your inner temperatures. May cause mild visions of St. Jerome. Or bees. You take a sip. It tastes like someone steeped leather in mint water and regrets. Outside, you hear the bells of the nearby monastery. The monks have started ringing them at odd hours now. Some say it's to confuse evil spirits. Others think it's just bad timekeeping. Either way, it adds to the sense of cosmic indigestion. You limp out of the apothecary's shop, leech bites gently weeping, and make your way to the bathhouse for what you hope will be a less invasive kind of healing. As you undress, you overhear two older men arguing about planetary alignments. Mars is ascendant, one says. That's why my garden died. The other counters, it's Venus in retrograde. My goats haven't slept in 3 nights. The bath is particularly full of scholars today. Or at least, men pretending to be scholars. You slip into the water near a group holding a heavily annotated star chart. They look concerned. See this? One says, pointing at a jagged scribble. The comet is traveling against the zodiac. That's unnatural. Another nods, stroking his beard. It's probably slicing through Saturn's influence. Or maybe violating the sanctity of Aquarius. You try to suppress a laugh. Violating Aquarius sounds like a crime punishable by horoscope. But for real, this is serious stuff to them. Astrological medicine was real. A physician would cast your chart, diagnose your illness, and prescribe a planetary antidote. Some even carried engraved copper discs to protect their patients' organs from celestial misalignment. You once met a man who swore his kidneys were safe because he wore a moonstone belt. He also smelled like boiled turnips, so, not a great control group. The bathhouse attendant comes by with a tray of infused waters, lemon peel, rosemary, chamomile, and something that smells suspiciously like licorice and fear. You take the chamomile. Your nerves need it. The man next to you pulls out a folded parchment and spreads it carefully over the dry stone edge. It's a celestial table. Rows and rows of planet positions, dates, and short Latin phrases like mortem magnum and tempus obscurum. Comforting stuff. I had this made, he says proudly. It calculates the probability of plague based on comet trajectory and bloodletting history. Is that common math, you ask? No, he says, slightly insulted. It's planetary calculus. You nod like you understand. You don't. At the far end of the bathhouse, someone has set up a small consultation booth. A tired astrologer lounges there, a long pointer in one hand and a price list in the other. Birth chart, 5 florins. Marriage reading, 8 florins. Comet impact assessment, 12 florins and a piece of good cheese. A woman pays and leans in. Do you see death? She asks. The astrologer squints at the stars on his parchment, then shrugs. I see everything. She sighs. That's worse. The man beside you starts humming at him under his breath. Not loud enough to be devout, just enough to keep the water from feeling too still. You can tell he's scared. Everyone is. The comet has fried their nerves like leftover polenta. But they're trying. They're soaking. They're chanting. They're buying garlic at triple the normal price. You finish your bath with a scrub of rosewater soap and exit into the evening air. It's brisk. The comet's glow paints the cobblestones pale gold. You feel wrung out, like an old towel, but cleaner. Inside and out. You don't know if the bomb worked, or the leeches, or the star chart. But for now, your bile feels balanced. Probably. You're leaning against a wall under a sliver of sun, chewing a fig, when a man rushes past clutching a roll of parchment like it's a newborn child. He doesn't even slow down as he barrels through a cart of lemons. Papers fly. Lemons fly. The lemons, at least, land gracefully. You pluck one from the ground, sniff it, and take a step back from the commotion. That parchment? Probably a star chart. You've seen a lot of those lately. A proper Renaissance astrologer is basically the town's meteorologist, therapist, and doom consultant rolled into one, and right now, business is booming. You wander through the university quarter, where the scent of ink and ego hangs in the air. Every window seems to frame a scholar bent over a desk, candles burning even in daylight. They're scribbling wildly, eyes bloodshot, murmuring phrases like the third house is compromised and Jupiter's in retrograde, again. Charts are pinned to walls, draped over furniture, even inked onto palms for easy reference. Everyone's calculating the end, or at least trying to schedule it. You sneak into a lecture already in progress. A tired-looking man in purple robes paces before a blackboard covered in celestial doodles. Now, he says, tapping the drawing of the comet, note the angle. It deviates from the path expected in conjunction with Saturn's influence. This deviation implies. He trails off, dramatically. Someone in the audience gasps, which seems excessive. You lean closer. Implies, he finishes, a disruption of natural order. Maybe famine. Maybe war. Possibly just bad hair. You appreciate his honesty. Renaissance astrologers weren't just stargazers, they were respected consultants. Princes wouldn't make major decisions, wars, marriages, even dinner parties, without an astrologer's nod. In fact, you learned today that Cosimo de' Medici once delayed a journey by 3 days because Mars was being moody. The city still thanks Mars for the detour, he avoided an ambush. Historians still argue whether astrology in this era was closer to science or storytelling. It used math, sure, but also dreams, symbols, and an extremely loose relationship with certainty. People weren't looking for facts. They were looking for meaning, something to anchor themselves to while the sky burned. You head back toward the bathhouse, but not before visiting one of your favorite spots, a corner stall run by a man named Giulio who, despite claiming he's not an astrologer, sells custom birth charts and star-guided romantic advice for a reasonable fee. He greets you with a nod and points to a small wooden sign that reads, Comet Services. Doom Assessment, Basic 5 florins. Doom Assessment, Deluxe, includes wine 8 florins. Lucky Comet Charms, now on Sky Blue 3 florins. I'll take the Deluxe, you say, mostly for the wine. Giulio pours generously and unfurls a chart, scratching his chin theatrically. Well, he says, you were born under Libra, which usually means balance, beauty, and chronic indecision. But now, he circles something with a shaky quill. Now you've got this. A flaming visitor from beyond, slicing through the sky like a hot knife through your love life. Sounds about right, you mutter. He shrugs. Don't worry. Worst case scenario? You shed all your earthly attachments and achieve transcendence. Or you meet someone tall and mysterious. Could go either way. You sip your wine, stare at the chart, and think, maybe both. By the time you return to the bathhouse, the sun has dipped behind the dome of the cathedral, and the comet is beginning its nightly performance. The warm, wet air of the bathhouse is a comfort blanket. You slide into the water and feel your muscles loosen, your limbs floating like bread and broth. A young woman across from you is tracing the comet's path in the air with her finger, whispering numbers. 17 days, she says. It's been 17 days. In Rome, they say 21 means death. Someone snorts. They say everything means death. Another woman murmurs, it passed through Pisces last week. That's water. We should be safe. Her companion shakes her head. No, Pisces rules the feet. We're doomed from the ankles down. You close your eyes and let the nonsense float past like steam. It's comforting, somehow, all this semi-logic. Like listening to a friend dream out loud. One of the older men begins sketching your natal chart in bathwater on the stone beside you. What's your birth hour? He asks. Give or take a crow's cry. You give him a guess, and he gets to work with the concentration of a monk illuminating scripture. He finally looks up. You'll be fine. Unless Venus decides to throw a tantrum. You thank him, sincerely. People need explanations. Always have. Especially during uncertain times. When plague hits, or crops fail, or the stars streak red, people don't want silence. They want someone with a pointy hat to say, yes, this means you should eat more turnips. Even in the city's libraries, the star maps grow weirder. You see one with a dancing bear on it. Another where the comet is labeled Divina Lancia, divine spear. One chart places it in a new constellation entirely, the Mad Nun. You can't tell if that's real or satire. Honestly, same difference. Back home, you light a candle and look up through a slatted skylight. The comet is right overhead tonight, sharp and glowing like a god's dagger. You whisper your name to it, just to see if it stirs. It doesn't, but something inside you does. You return to the bathhouse the next morning not because you're particularly dirty, although that fig tart did get a little out of hand, but because, in a city teetering between apocalyptic prophecy and mild hysteria, the bathhouse feels oddly stable. The marble's still cold underfoot, the steam still curls around your shoulders like a sleepy cat, and the same old man still insists the water was warmer back in the days before this comet nonsense. Inside, the familiar scent of olive oil soap, damp stone, and lavender hits you like a lullaby. You inhale. You're home. The front atrium buzzes gently. Someone plays a slow lute melody near the entrance. Someone else sneezes into a cloth and immediately insists it's just the time pollen. The usual mix of tradesmen, merchants, gossips, and minor nobility fill the pools and alcoves. But today, there's a twist. People are treating the bathhouse like a chapel. You notice it as you walk in, subtle things. A small wooden token left at the fountain. A scrap of parchment floating near a soap dish, scrawled with a saint's name and a quick please, just one more year. Someone even etched a prayer into a damp wall tile. Protect my daughter's lungs, it reads, curling in delicate script beneath a cluster of mildew. The bathhouse has become a sanctuary in more ways than one. Not just a place to scrub away sweat and street grime, but a safe harbor from celestial judgment. You slip into the warm pool and hear murmurs, not of politics or lovers or meat prices, but of omens, forgiveness, protection. Someone beside you sighs and mutters, I just want to die clean. You nod. That's fair. Historians still argue whether bathhouses in Renaissance Italy were more cultural, medical, or spiritual spaces. The truth is, they were all three. A bath could be ritual. A bath could be therapy. A bath could be the only thing standing between you and despair. You float gently in a corner pool, the ceiling above darkened by steam and time, while two women nearby pour oil onto each other's shoulders. They murmur blessings, little ones. For health. For calm dreams. For no unexpected nosebleeds during Sunday Mass. Across the room, a group of merchants sit on stone benches with towels draped over their laps, trading comet theories like stock tips. It's passing east, one says, which means we'll be spared. Unless you own goats. I do own goats, another says, looking suddenly betrayed by the heavens. Then you might consider donating them to a church, the first replies, far too cheerfully. A ladle of citrus-scented water is passed your way. You sip. Cool, herbal, comforting. You wonder what future generations will think when they dig up this bathhouse. Will they imagine some serene ritual? Some grand spa tradition? They won't know about the panic sweat or the whispered prayers. Or the fact that you, and others, began writing short wishes on the walls like cosmic post-its. A stone tile near you is slightly loose. You pry it gently and find a scrap of fabric wedged beneath, stitched with a single word, mercy. Maybe that's the point. When everything above your head feels threatening, you look for safety underfoot. And here, with hot water, candlelight, and the quiet sound of someone softly humming a hymn in the next room, you find something that feels suspiciously like peace. You move to the cold plunge, partly for balance, partly for the jolt. It bites your skin, draws a little gasp from your lungs, but it's honest. The kind of sharp that feels realer than prophecy. A man nearby speaks up suddenly. My brother thinks the comet is a kind of test. A trial by water and fire. He sounds dramatic, you say, teeth chattering. He shrugs. He is a playwright. Back in the warm pool, someone lights incense. Sandalwood, maybe. Or whatever wood smells like regret, and sandalwood had a moody child. You inhale deeply and close your eyes. Time moves differently in the bathhouse. Slow, syrupy. Minutes melt into each other like wax pooling near a candle base. You feel your pulse slow, your thoughts untangle. You imagine the comet's still out there, still burning, but suddenly it doesn't seem so sharp, so loud. You imagine it looking down and seeing this, a group of half-naked humans steaming gently and passing rosemary sprigs like treasure. You think, we must look ridiculous. And that comforts you. The bathhouse, despite its echoes and the occasional floating hair, is a place of strange clarity. You overhear confessions here that would never be spoken in churches. People speak softly when their skin is bare and the steam makes the world fuzzy around the edges. A man whispers that he once stole a priest's wine. A woman says she saw the Virgin Mary in a puddle. Someone says, "I kissed my friend's wife and liked it." No one judges. The water holds it all. As you towel off, your skin pink and slightly drowsy, you pass a young girl carefully placing a bundle of thyme and laurel into a corner basin. For the comet, she tells you, as if that explains everything. And maybe it does. You're halfway through an apricot and quietly judging a pigeon when you notice something curious. The man across from you smells expensive. Not just clean, wealthy clean. Like bergamot oil and rosewater, with undertones of freshly laundered silver. He reclines on a carved bench in the sunken marble bath, ankles crossed, eyes half-lidded, the very picture of Renaissance smug. It's one of the newer bathhouses, the kind with imported tiles and ceiling murals of vaguely biblical, vaguely naked scenes. You know the type, water piped in from a private spring, separate pools for medicinal and pleasure soaking, and a staff that knows exactly how long to look busy before vanishing. Here, your entrance was met with measured nods and no eye contact. The marbles wider. The linen towels, somehow thicker. Even the steam feels like it's been filtered through judgment. And it hits you, not all bathhouses are created equal. Cleanliness, here, is luxury. Classy filth is one thing, but spotless? Spotless takes money. In your more modest haunt, people bathe for health, gossip, routine. Here, they bathe for status. You watch a servant pour warm milk into a bath. Another rubs crushed violet petals between his master's fingers so he can feel the scent. Someone else is receiving a scalp massage from a man who looks personally insulted by the concept of hair. You lower yourself into the cooler of the two pools. It smells faintly of mint and ambition. Historians still argue whether bathing was more a necessity or a vanity in Renaissance Italy, but one thing's clear, public baths reflected more than hygiene. They mirrored the social ladder, one tile at a time. You're not just scrubbing off dirt here. You're announcing your place in the city's tapestry. A merchant in stained linen soaking in rosemary broth is sending a different message than a banker reclined under floating rose petals with 3 assistants and a personal mirror. Even bathhouse placement was strategic. Rich neighborhoods had different water temperatures, different oils, different rules. Some restricted entry to nobility or those who carried themselves with grace. Translation: if you looked like a tax clerk, no steam for you. The woman across from you is wearing a sheer linen wrap and an expression of calculated boredom. She sips lemon water and says, to no one in particular, "I simply cannot bathe in public anymore." The idea of sharing a tub with someone who eats with their fingers, ghastly. A servant laughs dutifully. You resist the urge to eat your apricot very loudly. It's true, though, bathing had become political. Who you bathed with mattered. Where you bathed mattered. There were marble tub families and wash tub families, and you'd better know which one you belonged to. You once saw a man get demoted, socially, after being spotted in a shared cold plunge. His friends said it was a brave act of the common spirit, but they stopped inviting him to dinners. It wasn't always like this. In earlier centuries, public baths were more egalitarian. But Renaissance Italy was in its show-off era. Wealth was the new religion, and cleanliness? The sermon. The bathhouse attendant offers you a fresh cloth soaked in wine and myrtle oil. You thank him. He doesn't thank you back, clearly you're not famous enough. Across the pool, someone sighs and says, if the comet burns the poor first, I hope it spares the mosaic tiles. They're antique. You raise an eyebrow. No one's joking anymore, not really. There's a darker edge here, beneath the scent of orange blossoms and self-importance. The rich are scared too, they're just better at hiding it behind skin treatments and carefully timed donations. A young man beside you whispers, my uncle had a new well dug. Holy water, he says. Bottled it himself. He's selling it at market. You nod. What's he charging? The boy leans closer. 5 florins. Per drop. You look around and realize most people here have bought something comet-related. Charms, potions, prayers written on silk. And yet, here they are, soaking like nothing's wrong, because cleanliness is armor. A soapy shield. If you shine enough, maybe the comet won't see you. Someone announces the arrival of a minor nobleman, and the attendants scatter like startled birds. Towels are fluffed, oil warmed. The noble floats in, tall and freckled, his expression permanently unimpressed. Prepare the fig mist, he says. You don't ask. You retreat to the side room, where a colder plunge waits. It's quieter here. Less performative. A few others linger, middle class, maybe lower noble. People who know the price of mint oil but only buy it on feast days. One man leans toward you. They say in Venice, the poorest bathe in barrels filled with boiled seawater. He says it with the same tone you'd use to describe eating soup with your hands. You nod. Better than no bath at all. He shrugs. Maybe. But reputation stains deeper than sweat. You let that hang there. Back in the dressing area, you watch a boy polish a gold-handled back-scratcher with more care than most people give their spouses. When he leaves, you overhear him muttering to himself, "If the stars kill us, let us die glistening." You dry off slowly, dressing in silence. Outside, the comet is visible again, faint now in the late afternoon, but still there. Still glaring. You wonder how long until the bathhouses close their doors to all but the richest. Or until someone declares the water morally corrupt and has it drained. You wouldn't be surprised. But for now, you walk the city clean. You may not have bathed in wine or been perfumed by servants, but your skin sings with heat and soap. You feel like yourself again. And that, you think, might be the most rebellious thing anyone can be right now. By the time you reach the chapel steps, the incense has already soaked the walls. You aren't here for a sermon, not really, you're here for the shouting. And sure enough, from within, you hear the sharp echo of a preacher's voice bouncing around stone arches like an angry dove. And so, brothers and sisters, he proclaims, how can one wash the body and ignore the soul? Ah, there it is. You slip into the back pew, still damp from your bathhouse visit. The preacher is tall, intense, and practically glowing with divine disapproval. You go to your baths, he bellows, your pagan springs. You scrub and perfume and gossip while the Lord's judgment streaks through his very skies. Someone near the front whispers, I think he just said soap causes comets. Close. Renaissance Italy had a weird, twitchy relationship with bathing and sin. One minute, saints were recommending herbal soaks for spiritual purity. The next, bishops were condemning shared tubs as dens of lust and moral collapse. Cleanliness walked a very thin line between godliness and scandal. You watch the preacher pace, robes swishing like angry curtains. Did John the Baptist soak in rose oil? Did St. Catherine of Siena exfoliate? A merchant to your left mutters, I'd like to see him after 5 hours in a market stall in July. Historians still argue whether church opposition to public bathing was grounded in actual theology or just fear of the bathhouse's social power. They were places of connection, talk, strategy, even romance. And nothing gives a bishop heartburn like a bunch of half-naked citizens organizing a trade alliance while rinsing their elbows. You step back out into the street, blinking in the bright light. A group of young clerics walks past, carrying bundles of rosemary. You hear one say, Father Angelo says it's fine to bathe if you recite a psalm during the rinse. So now we've entered the bath litigation phase of the Renaissance. Rules are bending under pressure. Some priests declare that only cold plunges are holy. Others insist baths must be taken alone, and only on Thursdays. One friar recommends soaking in salted water while fasting and reciting the Ave Maria backward. That last one just feels mean. You stop by a vendor who's set up a table with approved soaps. He leans in, whispering, blessed by a Dominican. Guaranteed not to tempt. The label's red, chastity myrtle, repentant lavender, and saintly mint. You buy the lavender out of curiosity and get a free small rosary with purchase. Bathhouses are adapting too. The more respectable ones now display saints' images near the entrance. A few have added private prayer alcoves with kneeling stones and modesty screens. At your usual haunt, Sandro the attendant mutters, I had to hang a crucifix over the cold tub. Apparently the Pope's watching now. Still, the bathhouse holds its ground. When you return that evening, it's buzzing with a strange defiance. People scrubbing more vigorously than necessary, like if they just wash hard enough, they'll erase both comet and sin. The air smells of basil oil and rebellion. You slip into the warm pool, muscles sighing with relief, and join a group mid-conversation. I told my confessor I bathed for health, a woman says, and he said health was prideful. Someone laughs. Tell him to try sleeping with fleas. They trade stories like currency. One man claims a local bishop was seen sneaking into a private bath disguised as a wine merchant. Another heard of a nun who uses rosewater and lemon every Friday in case of angelic inspection. The idea that bathing could be morally risky doesn't make anyone stop. It just makes them sneakier. Or more poetic. You close your eyes, letting the warm water blur the edges of the room. You think about how confusing it must be to live in a world where soap is sometimes salvation and sometimes temptation. Where the same herbs used in medicine are also burned to banish sin. Where bodies are both divine vessels and fleshly traps. It's a Renaissance contradiction, one of many. This era that birthed Michelangelo and Machiavelli, cathedrals and conspiracies, also believes that your soul might slide out your pores if you scrub too hard. You float there, drifting, half dreaming, until a small voice beside you says, "Do you think angels bathe?" You turn. A young boy floats nearby, his hair slicked flat, eyes wide. "Maybe," you say. "Probably not in fig milk." He grins. "I think they bathe in clouds." You nod. That would explain the smell of rain. Later, back on the streets, you spot a chalk message on a wall, "I bathe, therefore I sin. But at least I smelled good doing it." You wonder who wrote it, and whether they have more soap. The comet blazes above. The churches rage below. But in between, humans keep slipping into warm water, chasing cleanliness like it might save them. Or at least hold off judgment for one more day. It starts with a whiff. A mineral tang, sharp and earthy, that sneaks up your nose before you've even reached the edge of town. Then the warmth hits, rising from the ground like a sigh, curling through the morning mist. You follow the narrow trail of moss-covered stones, drawn like a moth with sore joints, until the trees part and reveal it, the hot spring. It doesn't look like much. A rocky pool ringed with algae and wild herbs, with steam rising in sleepy curls. But when you dip a toe in, the water wraps around your skin like velvet. Heated by the earth itself, blessed by time, or cursed by geology, depending who you ask. The springs outside the city have become oddly popular lately. Since the comet arrived, the main bathhouses are more crowded and more tense. But here, people speak softer, move slower, soak longer. You wade in, the warmth creeping up your legs like a benevolent conspiracy. Someone hums nearby, off-key but content. A breeze stirs the leaves. For a moment, it feels like time has pulled back, leaving only breath and water. Two women soak near the far edge, their skin rosy, hair piled high with ribbon pins. They say this spring heals what the stars bruise, one murmurs, voice thick with sleep. As long as you don't ask too many questions. You don't. Throughout Renaissance Italy, natural springs were a sacred contradiction. Medicine and miracle. Sanctuary and seduction. Even the church, with its usual suspicion of comfort, often allowed exceptions for healing waters, provided you didn't enjoy them too much. One spring in Tuscany was said to cure melancholy. Another was famous for boosting fertility, especially if you sang while bathing. What you had to sing was never clarified. Some claimed the sulfurous waters near Naples could purge bad air brought on by comets. A few enthusiastic types suggested it also protected against envy, weak ankles, and being gossiped about by neighbors. Historians still argue whether the health benefits were real or imagined, but the rituals around these springs tell their own story. People believed in the healing, and belief is half the medicine. You settle into a spot where the rocks cradle your back like a well-worn chair. The warmth is deep, bone deep. You feel your muscles unravel, one knot at a time. Somewhere nearby, someone pours herb-infused water over their scalp and whispers, "May this rinse cleanse what fear cannot." It's not exactly scripture, but it's something. A man limps down the path, robes hiked above his knees, eyes red from weeping, or maybe pollen. He's greeted with quiet nods. Everyone here has their reason. A sore hip, a broken heart, a creeping dread born of too many comet dreams. You strike up a quiet conversation with a young apothecary apprentice. She's here collecting spring water for a tincture. This pool, she explains, has high sulfur content and something else, maybe iron? Or penance. You smile. Tastes like regret. Regret and healing, she says, dipping a clay vial into the water. Like all the best things. You learn that she's been tracking local spring rituals since the comet appeared. There's a woman who leaves plum pits at the edge of the pool every morning. Another who sings to the rocks. A man who drinks exactly 3 sips, then spits one out toward the east. Any of it work? You ask. She shrugs. They keep coming back. And you understand why. In the city, fear is sharp, metallic, noisy. Out here, it's soft, muted. like moss growing over stone. You can still feel it, but it doesn't bite. Someone begins chanting softly. Not not Latin. Just sounds, old, melodic, untranslatable. You close your eyes. Let the warmth carry you. Time stretches. A bird calls. A frog answers. A leaf lands on your shoulder and floats like a lazy thought. A splash breaks the surface, someone entering the water with a prayer and a curse. May this spring pull the weight from my bones and shut up my brother-in-law once and for all. Laughter bubbles up, light and real. For a moment, it feels like the comet can't see this place. Like it's blinded by the steam. But of course, it's still there. When you emerge from the water, skin flushed and fingers pruned, you glance upward, and there it is. That glowing tail cutting across the afternoon sky. Watching. Judging. Unchanged. Still, something in you has shifted. The heat has seeped into your core, loosened something clenched. You're not cured, not cleansed, not transformed, but you're less tense. And that's enough. You dress slowly, feet still damp, hair smelling of time. As you walk the winding path back to the city, someone passes you heading in the opposite direction, carrying a candle and a bottle of wine. You nod at each other like two secret members of a very gentle cult. Back among the cobblestones and cathedral shadows, the panic feels sharper again. Bells ring. People argue. A monk shouts about prophecy on a corner. But you? You still have that warmth tucked into your spine. Like a secret ember. And for tonight, at least, the fire in the sky feels a little less personal. You're still toweling off when a man at the edge of the warm pool slaps the surface with his palm and says, I sealed a business deal in this very water last week. He beams with pride. No paperwork. Just two naked men, 3 witnesses, and a handshake. The guy across from him snorts. You sealed it with bathwater? Better than ink, the man replies. Ink dries. Steam lingers. You chuckle. There's truth in it. The bathhouse isn't just where people soak, it's where they scheme. Behind every olive oil rub and cucumber water sip, deals are brewing, alliances are forming, and rumors hatch like eggs under hot stone. You settle into the curved edge of the pool, shoulders melting into the warmth. This isn't your fancier haunt, no fig mist here, but it's lively. Honest. The city's mid-tier movers and shakers float in this water, merchants, city scribes, poets with too many patrons and not enough coins. They gossip, they barter, they flirt. And they trust the water like it's a witness. Did you hear about Aldo's shipment? Someone whispers, half submerged. Storm took half the spices. He's blaming the comet. I would too, comes the reply. Can't argue with flaming sky justice. This is where decisions get made, quietly, steamily. That land purchase? Discussed over a peppermint foot soak. The sudden arrest of a minor official? Traced back to a poorly timed whisper in the cold plunge. Someone's marriage delayed? Probably something said near the soap dishes. The bathhouse isn't officially political, of course. But like everything unofficial in Renaissance Italy, it's secretly vital. Historians still argue how much real power flowed through these tiled chambers, but records show that bathhouses were unofficial courts, banks, and even recruitment hubs. One historian described them as the Renaissance version of a very wet parliament. You look around and see it. 2 men scribbling notes with wax pencils on waterproof slates. A woman in the hot pool flicking water rhythmically as she discusses grain prices. A clerk muttering passwords under his breath before approaching a wine merchant with a coded phrase, the basil wilts in sunlight. What? The merchant replies, confused. Never mind, the clerk mumbles, retreating. The attendant, Sandro, tells you that one group even meets here weekly to decide on neighborhood repairs, who patches what wall, who funds the paving. They bathe, vote, snack, then bathe again. Democracy, but moist. You glance to the cold pool, where a city magistrate is having his feet scrubbed by an apprentice while dictating a letter to his niece's tutor. Tell him to avoid metaphors about fire and stars, he says. Everyone's nervous enough. You hear another patron, mid-30s, fast talker, bragging that he was offered a position on the city guild board in the changing room. They said I looked decisive in linen. It makes sense. The bathhouse is where everyone's guard is down, literally. No armor, no layers, no fake rings or dramatic cloaks. Just skin and steam and the occasional modesty towel. You can read a person here better than any office or dining hall. And yet it's not all business. One young man across from you is clearly on a first date. His hair is wet, his stories are louder than necessary, and he's sitting too close. His companion, calm, unbothered, sips citrus water and replies only with every few minutes. You give him 5 more minutes before he drowns himself in the scented rinse basin. In another corner, 2 older men recline in silence, hands folded behind their heads. No words. Just shared heat and the occasional synchronized exhale. You get the sense they've met here every week for years. Maybe decades. They don't need to talk anymore. The bath does it for them. You slip into the herb pool, thick with thyme and rosemary. Someone has added a few slices of apple, for cleansing energy. It smells like a salad with self-esteem issues. A poet nearby is reading aloud to a small group. Something about a woman bathing in moonlight under a comet's gaze. Everyone nods solemnly. One person claps. Someone else asks, "Is that based on you?" The poet shrugs. "I am based on me." As the sun lowers outside, the mood softens. Talk shifts from trade to dreams. A woman recounts seeing herself flying in the night sky, trailing steam like a comet. A young mason describes a dream where the city turned to soap and melted into the sea. And the soap was lemon, he adds. Someone plays a lute from the dressing room. Badly. But no one complains. You rise from the water slowly, joints creaking, skin flushed. You feel clean in more ways than one. Lighter. Less comet-struck. At the drying bench, a merchant pats your shoulder. Same time next week? Might settle the spice deal by then. You nod. As long as the comet allows it. He grins. If not, I'll bring wine. You wrap yourself in linen, step into the cooling evening, and look up. The comet burns on, brilliant, terrifying, absurd. But for now, your skin is soft, your mind quiet, and your social calendar oddly full. You think, the comet may rule the sky, but down here, the bathhouse rules everything else. The door swings shut behind you with a familiar thud, muffled by steam and laughter, but tonight, the men's side feels quieter than usual. Softer, somehow. As you ease into the water, you realize why. The sound is coming from beyond the partition. The women's chamber is awake. You rarely hear more than the occasional splash or sneeze from that side. The layout is careful, modest, socially appropriate. But this evening, the voices rise, talk, then giggles, then a sharp peal of laughter that echoes through the stone like bells in a fog. You lean back, water lapping at your shoulders, and listen. On the other side of the divider, the Renaissance is unfolding with fewer scrolls and more side-eye. Women, like men, came to the bathhouse to soak, heal, and gossip. But they also came to breathe, to let their hair down, literally and figuratively, and speak without being watched by statues and husbands. Not that anyone on the men's side is especially noble. But over there, behind that painted curtain and carved stone arch, the mood is different. Warmer. Wilder. Less performative, more poetic. You hear someone say, "He told me the comet made my freckles look dangerous. I told him the comet didn't deserve the credit." Laughter again. Then someone begins singing, a low tune, wordless, winding like incense smoke. It curls into your chamber and coats the steam with mystery. Historians still argue how much autonomy Renaissance women truly had within these spaces. But between the restrictions and reputation, the bathhouse was one of the few places a woman could speak freely without a veil or a chaperone. Here, they weren't daughters, wives, or widows. They were just bodies in warm water, glowing with oil and wit. A passing attendant offers you a towel. You nod toward the curtain. "Busy over there?" He grins. "They're in a mood tonight. Someone brought honey cakes." You stare at him. "I've never had honey cake here." He shrugs. Wrong side. You consider hopping the divider, just for cake research, obviously, but decide against it. You'd probably end up with a sandal in your teeth. Instead, you close your eyes and let their conversation drift to you. She said her midwife swore the comet means girls born this month will have fire in their bones. My cousin named her baby Astra. Like the sky. Bold. I would have gone with Cometa. Less subtle. Someone splashes deliberately. Naming your child after a celestial harbinger of doom? That's peak Florence. Another voice, calmer, almost dreamy. Maybe it's not doom. Maybe it's just a signal. A shift. A reminder that we're seen. You think about that. How a comet might not just bring fear, it might also bring clarity. Or courage. Or even cake. There's a lull, then one voice says, You know the sculptor who works near the cathedral? A ripple of intrigued hums. He told me he dreams of carving me bathing under the comet. Life-sized. More hums. And I told him. A pause. He better start with the feet and work his way up. The shriek laughter that follows hits your chamber like a wave. You open your eyes and notice that even the men around you are smiling. One nods. I'd carve her hands first, he mutters, almost to himself. It's easy to forget, sometimes, that women weren't just background figures in Renaissance Italy. They ran businesses, wrote poems, advised kings behind curtains, and bathed like the rest of us, with their own dreams, ailments, and favorite oils. A noblewoman might soak beside a merchant's widow and argue about whose feet needed more lavender. The bathhouse leveled things. No silk, no velvet, just skin, steam, and sly observations. You hear someone mention a comet remedy, soaking with rose petals and whispering your mother's name 3 times. It's not science, she says, but it feels kind. Another shares a recipe for preventing wrinkled dreams, basil and goat's milk, apparently. Someone else says she's been rubbing thyme on her wrists each morning in case the stars are listening. Then the conversation deepens. Softer tones. Hushed confessions. I dreamed I flew over the city. Naked. Glowing. I keep thinking of that comet as a mirror. Like it reflects everything we hide. Sometimes I want it to hit. Just so we can start over. Silence. Then, just, not tonight. You exhale, half smiling. You weren't meant to hear any of this, but you're glad you did. As you step out to dry off, you catch a glimpse through the decorative screen. Just a sliver, a braid dipped in oil, a flash of laughter, a hand resting gently on another's shoulder. Nothing scandalous. Just women being real. You wonder what the comet sees when it looks at them. The same fears? The same rituals? Or maybe a better version of the future. As you pull on your tunic, an attendant hands you something wrapped in cloth. From the other side, he says. Inside, a honey cake. Still warm. No note. No explanation. You glance back toward the divider and smile. Whatever this comet brings, at least you're not facing it alone. You're halfway down the street when someone grabs your arm and hisses, "Don't wash today." You pause, mid-step, startled. It's an older man, bent, wide-eyed, smelling faintly of vinegar and stale thyme. He leans in closer. "I saw it," he whispers. "Yesterday, in the cold pool." He scrubbed until he gleamed. "That night? Dead by morning." You blink. "Of what?" He narrows his eyes. "Too much cleanliness. The comet doesn't like pride." Then he shuffles off, muttering to himself about soap and judgment and the dangers of mint. Well, that's new. Apparently, the fear has entered its reverse phase. Bathing, once seen as protective, now flirts dangerously with being interpreted as tempting fate. Clean people die faster, the whispers say. The comet prefers the scrubbed, finds them easier to spot. In the square, a group of beggars has started smearing ash on their faces. Disguise, one tells you. We blend in better. The sky can't smite what it can't see. Nearby, a noblewoman walks quickly past them, flanked by guards. She's coated in powder, chalk, maybe, giving her the eerie glow of a marble statue. Not a wrinkle, not a shine. She looks like she hasn't touched water in a week. You head to your favorite bathhouse out of sheer stubbornness, but something's different today. Quieter. The usual crowd has thinned. Even Sandro looks twitchy. People are nervous, he admits, wiping down a basin. Some are saying water carries the star's reflection, that it pulls judgment straight to your pores. You snort. So what, now we bathe with our eyes closed? Sandro shrugs. Some are skipping altogether. Or bathing in secret. Secret baths. What a concept. Historians still argue about how the plague changed bathing culture. But this feels different. Not disease-based, but celestial. A fear not of contagion, but of visibility. People want to disappear. To avoid attracting the comet's glare with glowing cheeks and perfumed skin. You step into the warm pool anyway. The water welcomes you like an old friend. Around you, the few remaining bathers nod, tired, wary, but present. Someone mutters, "If I'm going to die, I'll do it clean and floating." A man to your left huddles in the corner, whispering to himself. "I used to bathe twice a week. Now I wonder if I've angered something." "It's not you," someone replies gently. "It's the sky. And that's the feeling now. Not guilt, Exactly, but exposure. Like the stars are suddenly auditors, and every lathered elbow a provocation. You hear of a man who's stopped washing entirely. Lives in his bar now, covered in straw. Unwashed and unbothered, someone quips. But also uninvited to dinner. Others have started dry bathing, just sitting near scented herbs and hoping the smell counts. One baker insists that if you rub yourself with a blessed towel, it works just as well. No water, he says. But it's wholly linen. A few brave souls mock the trend. One merchant stages a comet cleanse party with perfumed wine and gold fleck soap. You hear he got food poisoning from undercooked oysters. The rumor? Punishment for overbathing. Still, despite the whispers, the bathhouse holds. Barely. The woman across from you lifts a ladle of lavender water and lets it fall over her shoulder with a sigh. Let it find me, she says. I'm done hiding. It's bold. It's tired. It's strangely beautiful. Because somewhere deep down, everyone knows the comet doesn't care how clean you are. It doesn't check your feet for soap residue or judge your last rinse cycle. But fear isn't rational. Fear is sticky, like old oil on tile. It spreads. And yet, some fight back with defiance. A young couple kisses openly in the warm pool, steam rising around them like approval. An older woman scrubs her back with salt and mutters prayers in between grunts. A man nearby shaves his face with such intensity you'd think the stars were tangled in his beard. These are acts of rebellion now. Soap is protest. You leave the bathhouse with your skin flushed, head clear, and towel slung defiantly over your shoulder. The comet still burns above, unbothered, unflickering. But your spine is straighter. You pass a group of people slathering themselves in mud near the riverbank. One makes eye contact. We're hiding, she says. From the fire in the sky. You nod, then walk on. The street smells faintly of rose oil and fear. Tonight, you dream of bathing under the comet's light. No shame. No hiding. Just water and fire and the sound of someone laughing through the steam. The monk greets you at the doorway with a splash of rosewater to the face and a smile that's either serene or slightly unhinged. You sputter politely and try not to look too startled. Forgive me, he says, hands clasped in apology, but rose purifies. And you looked exposed. You glance up at the sky, yes, the comet's still there. Still staring. Still glowing like God accidentally left the stove on. You nod. Appreciated. You're not entirely sure it was, but monks tend to mean well, even when dousing strangers with flower water. This isn't your usual bathhouse. It's a small courtyard tucked behind a convent, where the line between hygiene and holy ritual blurs like steam on glass. Here, the baths are shallow, the light filtered through ivy-covered trellises, and silence is gently encouraged. A sort of halfway spa for the spiritually anxious. The monk leads you to a stone basin and gestures for you to kneel beside it. Begin with your hands, he says, then your face. Say 10 Ave Marias as you rinse. 12 if you've recently envied someone's hat. You hesitate. Is that a real rule? He shrugs. Sin clings to accessories. You begin. All around you, people bathe as if warding off demons one drop at a time. A noblewoman dips her feet into a basin laced with olive leaves, murmuring prayers under her breath. A boy scrubs his hands raw, then pauses to press his forehead to a carved stone shaped like Saint Sebastian's toe. Someone nearby drops a pinch of salt into the water and whispers a comet warning verse, spare the clean, blind the cruel, leave the soaking unscathed. It rhymes, so it must be working. This is what comet panic has become, equal parts folk remedy, improvised liturgy, and full-body superstition. Historians still argue whether rituals like these were sanctioned by the church or simply tolerated because they kept the masses bathed and behaved. A 2-for-1 deal. But today's ritual is especially intense. This monk, Brother Pietro, has developed a full comet curing sequence. Step 1. Cleanse the body. Step 2. Infuse the water with rose, rosemary, or relic-touched herbs. Step 3. Confession, preferably aloud, while submerged up to the collarbone. You try it. A little. Forgive me, you whisper, as you pour water over your chest, for laughing at the cardinal's weird toes. The monk gives you a thumbs up. Nearby, another man recites an exhaustive list of regrets, stolen apples, unpaid taxes. One time he told his wife her singing wasn't that bad. With each confession, he dunks his head under the water like he's trying to baptize his sins into oblivion. You can't lie, it's weirdly soothing. The whole place hums with a kind of solemn optimism. People want to believe that this ritual will help. That clean skin and an honest tongue might earn a little divine leniency. That a comet can be reasoned with, if not by telescope, then maybe by time. Brother Pietro brings you a small cup of infused water. Blessed, he explains. And mildly citrusy. You sip. It tastes like tangerines and faint desperation. The comet, he says gently, is not a punishment. It is a reminder. Of what? He looks up. That you're small. But not helpless. You think about that as you rinse your face again, this time more slowly. The water's cool now, sun-warmed and leaf-scented. You can hear someone singing behind the ivy wall. A child, maybe. Or someone pretending not to be afraid. Someone brings out a linen cloth embroidered with tiny stars and hangs it to dry in the breeze. A woman lights a beeswax candle and sets it beside the basin, murmuring a prayer in Latin so old it might be nonsense. Someone else pours a vial of wine into their bath with the solemnity of a priest offering communion. I made it with pomegranates, she says. To confuse the comet. That tracks, somehow. You notice a young man lighting small sprigs of rosemary and waving them over his wrists, eyes closed. For protection, he says, without opening them. And for smell. Even the ritualists admit practicality. And as the sky dims, the courtyard glows. Candles flicker along the pool's edge. Someone places petals in the water. No one laughs. Not in mockery, anyway. There's something sacred about this gathering. Half faith, half fear, and all human. You rise slowly, limbs slick with oil and grace. Someone hands you a small square of cloth, embroidered with the word Pax. Peace. You tuck it into your sleeve. You leave the ritual bath not just clean, but hushed. Not in the mouth, but in the soul. Like something frayed has been tied back together, however briefly. And as you step outside, you look up. The comet is still there. But tonight, it seems quieter. Maybe it's the rosewater. Maybe it's the prayers. Maybe it's just that, for a moment, you believe you've done enough. You smell it before you see it, burned beeswax, damp marble, and that unmistakable perfume of artistic ambition. You're at the gallery entrance of a well-to-do patron's villa, still towel-damp from your most recent bath, trailing the faint scent of basil and rosemary like a polite ghost. You follow the hum of voices and step into a vaulted space glowing with oil lamps and ego. There, across the room, is Venus. Or at least, someone's idea of her. Reclining in a marble tub. One toe teasing the water's surface. Hair coiled like she woke up from a flattering dream. And, oh yes, Comet, dead center in the painted sky, blazing like a divine spotlight. The artist has made it bright enough to steal the viewer's eye away from everything else, including Venus herself. A crowd melts around the fresco, murmuring like bees. Some nod in admiration, others purse their lips. One man gestures dramatically. It's her serenity, you see. The comet means nothing to her. She bathes anyway. She chooses serenity. I think it means she's doomed, someone else says. But at least her skin looks great. You edge closer and realize this isn't the only one. The entire gallery is filled with bath-themed paintings. Bathers under comets. Comets reflected in water. Women in shallow pools, glancing upward as if expecting the fireball to complement their posture. You laugh under your breath. It's like the artist couldn't decide which obsession to commit to, cosmic dread or flawless skin, so he mashed them together like soap and theology. A young boy tugs his tutor's sleeve and whispers, "Why are they all naked if it's the end of the world?" The tutor doesn't answer. Throughout Renaissance Italy, art was as much hygiene propaganda as it was spiritual exercise. Cleanliness wasn't just admired, it was aestheticized. Smooth skin meant virtue. Well-oiled limbs suggested harmony. A well-lit back muscle? Divine grace. Historians still debate whether the Renaissance bathing craze influenced the surge in bathing-themed art or vice versa. Probably both. It's a feedback loop. People bathed because it was virtuous, then saw paintings of virtuous bathers, and bathed more to feel like saints with nice collarbones. You move past another mural, this one more dramatic. A woman stands in a moonlit spring, water running off her arms as she stares up at the comet. Her expression isn't fear. It's curiosity. The artist's note beside it reads, "She is not judged. She is revealed." Someone murmurs, "That's my cousin." She posed for it. Twice. In the corner of the gallery, A less popular painting shows a man in a copper tub reading while the comet blazes above. He has a faintly worried expression and a towel on his head. You like him immediately. He feels real. Then there are the sculptures. One statue stands proud in the center of the atrium, a bathing woman, arms lifted, hair twisted above her head. At her feet, a small comet, rendered in silver leaf. The implication is obvious, she's not beneath the heavens. She's ignoring them. Or perhaps daring them. It's a statement, someone says, stroking their chin. About bodily resilience. Or maybe it's just a woman trying to wash her hair, you mutter. In one alcove, an artist demonstrates live sketching. A robed model dips her hands into a bowl of scented water while the artist frantically tries to draw both her fingers in the reflection of a comet in the surface. His charcoal snaps from pressure. I told you, he says, comet reflections are harder than they look. And yet, people can't look away. From the paintings. From the comet. From each other. The gallery has become a strange echo of the bathhouse itself, a place of exposure, reflection, and just a hint of scandal. You overhear one noblewoman sigh, I hope the comet destroys everything except this gallery. Her companion adds, and maybe my perfume recipe. The art is beautiful, yes, but also aspirational. People don't just want to bathe, they want to be the bather. Serene, clean, untouchable, immortalized with perfect ankles and a comet for lighting. You slip out into the courtyard, where a statue of Saint Cecilia bathes under an artificial waterfall. Someone's placed a rose on her shoulder. Someone else, a note, wash away my envy. You stand in the falling water a moment, pretending you're marble. You imagine a future where someone carves you like this, wet, blinking, bemused. A person trying to feel okay while the sky burns politely above. You return home late, skin still damp, your mind filled with painted bodies and marble curves. You light a candle and stare at the comet, wondering how many artists have sketched its curve, trying to frame disaster as something worthy of a gallery wall. Because in the end, the Renaissance doesn't fear the comet nearly as much as it wants to paint it beautifully. Tonight, the comet hangs lower. Or maybe your eyes are just tired. You stare up from your windowsill, arms wrapped around your knees, and swear you can see it twitch. Not move, twitch. Like it's thinking. Judging. It glows like a celestial burn mark on the universe's velvet skin. You could go to bed. You could pull your blanket over your head and pretend the sky isn't itching with prophecy. But instead, you do what many have done since this flaming guest arrived. You wander. The streets are quieter now. Not hushed with fear, but softened by awe. People have passed the panic stage. Past the garlic scrubbing, dry bathing, comet blaming hysteria. Now they're just watching. Waiting. You pass a couple sitting on the church steps, holding hands, heads tilted skyward. Further on, a child spins slowly in the middle of the square, arms stretched wide. It follows me, she giggles. You don't have the heart to say it follows everyone. Even the bathhouse feels different tonight. You go anyway. Of course you do. Inside, the steam is thinner, the air cooler. Lamps have been dimmed. Someone's brought in a small harp, and soft notes drift lazily through the space, as if sound itself can't be bothered to rush anymore. You slip into the warm pool and feel it immediately. Everyone's eyes are turned upward. Not at the ceiling, not at each other, but toward a small opening near the top of the dome, where someone has removed the tile. Through it, you can see the comet, framed like a painting, dragging its tail across the stars. It doesn't feel like dread anymore. It feels like a question. A boy nearby asks, "Do you think it's lonely?" You blink. A man across the pool shrugs. Probably. Long journey. Cold, too. Do you think it sees us? I hope not. We're all very naked. A soft laugh. Then silence again. Historians still argue whether this kind of collective watching, sky-gazing, late-night star panic, was religious or simply existential. But one thing's clear. People needed the night sky to feel like it meant something. Whether it was wrath or wonder, they couldn't bear the idea that the heavens were just indifferent. You stretch out in the water, floating slightly, watching the comet through the open tile. It's hard to be afraid when your ears are filled with harp music and your toes are being warmed by mineral-rich water. Someone begins humming a chant, low, steady, almost meditative. Others join in, unsure of the tune but committed to the mood. It's not a song of terror. It's a lullaby. For the sky. Or maybe for themselves. You let your fingers drift along the surface, tracing lazy circles, and remember how it felt that first night, the panic, the prophecies, the old man yelling about soap being the devil's slipper. All that heat, all that flailing. And now? Still fear, sure, but also curiosity. And beauty. There's something intimate about this moment. Like you're all in on a cosmic secret. The comet doesn't feel like a sword anymore. It feels like a story. Across the pool, a woman leans back and murmurs, "I feel seen." By the comet, someone asks. She smiles. By everything. And maybe that's it. The night, the bath, the fire above, it's not about being judged. It's about being noticed. In a world full of rushing and noise, the comet slows everything down. Reminds you that you're small, yes, but also real. You towel off slowly, not out of reluctance but reverence. The comet still burns overhead. Still majestic. Still mysterious. But for the first time, you don't want to hide from it. You want to meet its gaze. As you step outside, the cool air kisses your skin. People have gathered quietly along the edges of the square, lying on benches, leaning against doorframes, whispering poems they don't remember writing. Someone plucks a lute, 3 gentle notes, and then stops. You look up. The comet flares slightly, a slow golden blink. And for one wild moment, you swear it winks. It's noon when the drums start. Not war drums, not quite, but something festive, chaotic, half parade, half exorcism. You step into the street and see them, a procession of masked dancers, flapping banners, and someone in a papier-mâché comet hat waving incense in wide, lazy arcs. The fear, apparently, has been rebranded. Children run beside the marchers, giggling, flinging flower petals into the air. One boy wears a wooden sign around his neck. Comet? I hardly know it. A woman in silk robes offers blessed candied almonds from a tray shaped like a moon. Nearby, a man dressed as an astrologer pretends to faint every time someone points at the sky. Is this allowed? You ask the man next to you, watching the procession swirl through the square. He grins, mouth full of almond. No idea, but it sells souvenirs. And there it is. The comet, once the flaming embodiment of dread, has been folded into the local economy. The city's leaders, sensing the exhaustion in their people's bones, have leaned into the chaos. Turned fear into festival. Terror into merchandise. You can now buy comet-shaped bread, lightly dusted with cinnamon and divine mystery, comet-proof gloves, not scientifically tested, but fashionable, and tiny wooden charms carved into burning stars that promise, guaranteed to confuse celestial wrath. Historians still debate whether these comet festivals were genuine expressions of collective catharsis or just clever political PR stunts. Probably both. The Renaissance was nothing if not excellent at layering deep fear under glittering performance. You pass a stand where a poet for hire is composing custom comet sonnets. One couple stands hand in hand as he declaims, "Though sky be split with fire's bold trace, thy beauty holds the comet's place." The woman tears up. The man tips him a florin. You keep walking, stunned and amused by the transformation. Just a week ago, that same square hosted a barefoot procession of monks wailing for mercy. Now, street performers juggle fireballs under strings of hanging silver stars. One performance troupe reenacts the arrival of the great comet as a romantic opera, complete with a baritone who sings, "O blazing orb, forgive my debts," as he collapses into a tub of glitter. The crowd loves it. And it's not just theater. In the bathhouse that evening, the new tone has crept in. Someone's brought in small floating candles carved like stars. A few patrons wear festive garlands along with their towels. Even Sandro's humming under his breath as he sprinkles lavender into the rinse basin. You slip into the water and notice it immediately. The laughter is back. Not nervous laughter. Not panicked. Genuine. Across the pool, a merchant raises his glass of wine. To the comet! May it burn long and far, and never learn how taxes work. A few cheers. A few clinks of glass. You chuckle, despite yourself. Someone floats by on their back, arms stretched wide. "They should name this one after us," he says. "We've earned it." You close your eyes and let the warmth take you. You've bathed through fear, through silence, through whispered prayers. Now, you're bathing through celebration. Somehow, it feels just as sacred. Even the art has changed. New murals are going up, this time with smiling figures, outstretched arms, women twirling in celestial robes beneath whimsical stars. The latest gallery exhibit? Comet as Muse. In one corner of the bathhouse, two women are planning a celestial soak, an after-dark gathering under the comet, complete with citrus wine, string music, and prophetic haiku. You're invited, they say. Bring a towel. Someone else reads aloud from a fresh printed pamphlet, 10 comet positives. 1. You look fantastic in comet light. 2. Fire in the sky makes every bath dramatic. 3. More excuses to skip unpleasant errands. The tone's different now. Not naive, no one's pretending the comet isn't terrifying. But they're done letting it own them. You can feel it in the way people stretch again. How they linger in the baths longer. How someone has painted tiny flames on the soap dishes. A young boy sits by the edge of the warm pool, feet dangling. My father says if you make the comet laugh, it spares your house. You smile. And what makes it laugh? He shrugs. Probably farts. You nod. Probably. Back outside, the night smells of oranges and wood smoke. You follow the music toward the square, where dancers spin beneath silver paper lanterns shaped like stars. The comet still blazes above, but tonight, no one flinches when they look up. You find a bench. Sip something sweet. Watch the city sparkle in comet light. And you think, maybe fear isn't the only reaction to wonder. Maybe awe is also allowed. Maybe joy is a kind of shield, too. The comet watches. And for once, it doesn't feel like an enemy. You wake to find a small carving above the bathhouse door. It wasn't there yesterday. A neat little symbol chiseled just above the lintel, stylized flame trailing a curved star, framed in a crescent of leaves. It's subtle, almost pretty. You stare at it, head cocked, as someone passes behind you and says, "Nice, isn't it?" Means the place has been comet blessed. You blink. Is that official? Depends who you ask, they shrug. Some say it keeps the bad omens out. Others say it's just good branding. You step inside, smiling. Of course bathhouses would start decorating with comet iconography. What was once a symbol of doom has, somehow, become an accessory. Inside, someone has painted thin golden streaks across the upper corners of the walls, tiny comet tails meant to echo the sky. Little symbols have been added to the basins, too, sunbursts, stars, the occasional comet head looking like it's very determined to crash into your loofah. And it's not just here. On your walk through the city, you see it everywhere. Comet motifs etched into doorways, stamped into bread loaves, woven into tapestries, where flaming stars chase nymphs through lavender fields. There's even a pub now called the Flaming Tail, complete with a painted ceiling where the comet dangles above a party of giggling bathers. A church near the river has added a small stained glass panel, a robed angel bathing under a comet-shaped halo. No one can agree whether it's heretical or just avant-garde. Historians still argue whether this type of imagery was protective, mocking, or aspirational. But there's no denying it. What was once a terrifying symbol of divine wrath has become fashionable. Cozy, even. It's human nature. If we can't escape something, we decorate it. Back at the bathhouse, someone's carved another comet above the soap shelf. This one's wearing a crown. The Queen Comet, a woman says, with a grin. She rules bath time now. Sandro the attendant raises an eyebrow. She better not demand more towels. People are leaning into the theme hard. One woman lounges in the warm pool, her hair pinned with silver star clips, sipping tea from a cup shaped like a moon. It's called cosmic chic, she says. Celestial dread, but make it elegant. A merchant nearby has started a side business, hand-carved comet charms made of olive wood and old coins. Repels judgment, he claims. Or at least delays it until after lunch. You ask if it works. He shrugs. People keep buying them, so, maybe. Even the city's art scene has embraced the aesthetic. One fresco shows the comet as a flaming chariot pulling a goddess through the stars. Another depicts a bathhouse like a temple, each bather glowing with light while the comet anoints them from above. It's symbolic, the artist says. Or ironic. Possibly both. You soak in the warm pool, now tiled with tiny golden flecks that shimmer like distant sparks, and feel the shift. The comet hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has. You still don't know what it means. No one does. But somehow, it no longer feels like it's here to end you. It's here to remind you. Of light. Of change. Of the strangeness of living beneath a sky that never quite settles. Do you think it ever gets tired? Someone asks from the corner. All that glowing. All that attention. You glance up through the oculus, where the comet still streaks across the heavens like a god's exclamation mark. Maybe, you say. Maybe it's hoping we'll blink first. There's laughter. Not mockery. Something warmer. The night ends with a slow, collective rinse in the herb pool. Chamomile, rose, lavender. The kind of soak that feels like a lullaby. You close your eyes. Listen to water. To breathing. To silence. The comet burns on. And this time, you don't flinch when its light touches your skin. You return to the bathhouse one last time, not out of habit, not out of ritual, but because your body remembers what your mind sometimes forgets. Warmth is its own kind of resistance. The comet's still there, dragging its luminous tail across the sky like a calligrapher practicing the same flourish again and again. But tonight, it's not the main character anymore. Not here. Not in this water. Not with you. Inside, the steam is familiar. The air is heavy with thyme and orange blossom. The candlelight shimmers against damp stone. You slide into the warm basin, the scent of olive oil laced with mint curling up around your face. The heat is immediate, greedy, comforting. Like the tub missed you. Around you, the bathhouse hums with life, quieter than before, but deeper. Conversations are less frantic, more thoughtful. People soak with the stillness of those who've faced something terrifying and decided not to be ruled by it. One man leans his head back against the marble rim and sighs. Well, it didn't fall on us. Not yet. Another shrugs. If it does, I'll be clean. That's what matters. You smile. A third person lifts a cup of wine. To comet season, she says. May our next celestial omen come with better timing. There are no prophecies tonight. No panic. Just a soft acceptance. You've all lived through something strange together. You watched the sky go mad. You prayed, bathed, feared, flirted, fasted, joked, wept, and still, here you are, floating. Historians still argue whether the comet actually changed anything. But you know it did. Not the buildings. Not the borders. But the people. In here, there's a new gentleness. A collective softness. A quieter kind of bravery. Fear didn't win. It just got moisturized. Even Sandro seems more relaxed. He walks the perimeter humming something aimless, balancing a tray of scented towels like a priest of comfort. You nod to him, and he winks. Someone plays a slow tune on a lute near the entrance. The melody is simple, repeating, like ripples that don't want to fade. The woman beside you hums along under her breath. You look around and realize you know these people now. Not all their names, but their sighs, their rhythms, the way they lean into the water when they're tired, or grin after a joke that lands just right. These aren't just fellow bathers anymore. They're your strange little comet tribe. One young man begins recounting the week he spent refusing to bathe during the comet's peak panic. I thought I'd go invisible, he says. Turns out I just went smelly. There's laughter. And not the kind that bites. The comet is still visible through the small opening in the roof. But it's softer now. Paler. As if it's finally tiring, burning itself out in a slow arc toward history. You wonder how long it'll take to disappear completely. Days? Weeks? Will anyone cry when it's gone? As you rise, you trail your fingers along the water's surface and whisper goodbye to the tail in the sky. You dry off slowly, relishing the heat clinging to your skin. Someone has placed a bowl of rosemary sprigs by the door. You take one, tuck it behind your ear. A tiny ritual. One last nod to everything this place has given you. Outside, the streets are quiet. A few windows flicker with lamplight. A child sings a nonsense song about stars and soap. You pause. Listen. Smile. And then you walk home. The comet follows. But it doesn't haunt. It watches. It waits. It winks. And now, you're back in your own room. The fire's gone low. The windows are shut against the breeze, but a little chill still lingers near the floor. That's all right. Let it stay. You lie back and close your eyes, feeling the last of the bathhouse heat still curled in your bones, like an ember that refuses to go out. You can still smell the rosemary, just faintly, and the ghost of mint on your skin. Your muscles feel heavy. In the good way. Out there, the comet is still crossing the sky, quiet, brilliant, unchanged. Maybe it'll vanish tomorrow. Maybe it'll burn for weeks more. But for now, it's just part of the night. Not a warning. Not a threat. Just a light, like a lantern hung above the world to remind you, you're still here. Let that comfort you. Let the strange blend of fear and beauty wash back out with the tide of your breath. Tonight, you don't need to worry about omens or rituals. You don't need to prepare for anything. You've already lived it. You've soaked in it. You've laughed and whispered and looked straight into the fire above without blinking. That's more than enough. So breathe in slowly. Let it out even slower. The stars are watching. But kindly now. The comet has softened its gaze. And somewhere, the bathhouse waits for you again, warm and ready, just beyond the dream. Sleep well, you radiant little survivor. Sweet dreams.